This is the Fascia Fix, with Nelin and Justin Krull, exploring the body's most overlooked system to find healing from chronic pain and trauma. They're here to educate and empower you through fascia science, real stories, and self-healing tools. So, tune in, open your mind, and let's fix what's been broken.
Recently, I was listening to an episode of the Mel Robbins podcast, and it's actually an older episode, but she was talking about this season of back to school that will soon be upon us, and the idea of going back to school for yourself, for taking that time for self-improvement. And she suggested that everybody do what they would do for their kids, or what they used to do that their parents would do for them when they were going back to school, is to go to the stationery store, maybe go to a bookstore, your favorite store that carries these sorts of things, and buy yourself a beautiful journal and pen and start using it immediately. And today we want to talk about that idea of starting the writing process to allow yourself to process things.
Personally, ever since the teacher told us we had to write more than just a couple of sentences about what we did that weekend with a fun little coloring along with it, I've not been a huge fan of journaling personally.
Me either.
It wasn't until I started having my own healing experiences and realizing if I didn't write something down about how I felt in that moment or my experience, that I could potentially lose that experience to the next thing that grabbed my attention, or it's easy to get distracted and forget.
Certainly, especially with how busy all of our lives are. And so tell us a little bit about that. What did you do next when you started to realize that you wanted to write some things down and have those memories to draw from?
Mm-hmm. I was doing a breathwork session in a Myofascial Release course that rocked my world, for lack of a better word. We were doing this deep breathing exercises on a 3 count, and we were being encouraged to feel into the breath and to explore the emotions coming up and purposely allow the sound to come up along with it. And it turns out I had something in there I didn't know was in there, or at least I had forgotten and buried for a long time. And I remembered an experience from when I was much younger in grade 2, where I was attacked on the playground. And what started as this intense healing experience when we opened our business became, hey, we really want to tell other people about the importance of knowing that there can be strong emotional experiences locked into your fascial system. I'm going to write a blog, right? And it was a short little, I don't know, it was like 800 words, something like that, about the experience. And I told a little story along with it.
It's still there, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome to read it. And after that, it was watching our guest today being brave and putting herself out there with writing that encouraged me to reach out to her to share my story when I was offered the opportunity to be involved in a book called Mindset Mastery. So writing for this book inspired what would eventually become our online course. And then that online course and our continued work with Myofascial Release is what ultimately led to this show. So I'm going to take a moment now and just read the first couple paragraphs and set a scene for you. It was recess. The din of 1,000 children playing and exploring filled my ears as I hurtled myself between and around other children standing around talking or playing more idly. I was hunting. Hot from the pursuit, my 8-year-old body loved the familiar burn in my chest and in my legs from a good old-fashioned game of tag. Suddenly, an unfamiliar pressure came across my back and my chest and back. Then a stumbling underfoot. I was falling. No, wait. Was I just tackled? I felt the wind get knocked out of my chest as I made contact with the hardened dirt. The pressure of another child laid into my back, trapping me prone, and before I could gasp for air, suddenly an arm was wrapped around my throat. I attempted to thrash away, but my captor was strong. I was caught by surprise, and I couldn't breathe. I began to panic as I heard the boy growl as he excitedly squeezed harder. I tried to yell for help, but could barely make a sound. Some of the surrounding children stopped what they were doing and watched, but nobody made a move. Silent witnesses as I realized the child's pressure was intentionally on my windpipe. He really intended to hurt me. I pushed into the earth feebly with my hands. head and neck arched backwards, gasping for any available air I could get. I was dying.
Listening to that, I know that I've felt those sorts of terrifying experiences over the course of my life. And I bet a lot of our listeners, after hearing that, found some relation there into an experience that they had in their life. So walk us through, like, how did you feel about putting that story out there and what kind of came of it?
Well, it was terrifying to say the least, because when I eventually wrote it and shared it, my parents read it and, they did the best they could, giving me the awesome life that I had. But there are things that you can't control. And I understand now, as a parent looking back on it, how terrifying it is to send your kids to school and not know for certain they're going to come back exactly the way you sent them.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder, for people who are listening, if they've ever thought about, or if you've ever thought about putting some words to paper, putting pen to paper about your experiences, but have maybe thought, I don't know, should I be sharing this? Does it even make sense? Is this just going to re-traumatize me? And that's something that we want to discuss today, because the power of written word is so incredible. And for anybody who's considering it, this is the episode where you want to learn why you might actually consider doing that.
Absolutely. I was lucky enough to meet our guest today, Laura Franco, in her capacity as a physical therapist in the myofascial release treatment space, when she was in her early start of actually writing her own brave stories. And it was through watching her successfully launch her own first few books, create the publishing company that she now runs and operates, that I was invited to participate as a co-author in Mindset Mastery. And it really created the opportunity, the platform, to share that story in a more meaningful way than just, hey, here's a little example of what a healing crisis can look like for our patients who visit our website, but to put it out there as a legacy piece of, this is my story. This is a thing that happened to me, and this is what I learned from it for other people to experience.
So let's introduce our incredible guest for today's episode, Laura DeFranco. Laura DeFranco is the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, an award-winning publisher for holistic health, wellness, and business professionals, successfully launching more than 100 published Amazon best-selling books to date, and several dozen online courses through the newly refurbished and launched Brave Healer Transformation School.
Laura is also a multiple-time Amazon best-selling author herself, with 3 decades of expertise in holistic physical therapy and a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo.
All right. Welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm super happy to be here. This is like my favorite topic ever, you guys.
Awesome. That's so great. All right. So let's get into it. I'd love if you could share a little bit about how you became aware of John Barnes' myofascial release, because I understand that you did some training to become a physiotherapist. And then I'd also love to know how that career led you and took you to writing and publishing full time.
Oh my gosh, I was the luckiest duck ever in physical therapy school, because I had mentors. So imagine, I'm still a student, haven't even gotten out of school or started a first job yet, but people in my internships and in school that were practicing these kinds of alternative and holistic techniques like myofascial release. So I actually got just exposed to it and got practice in it before I even became a licensed therapist. Amazing. I think back to those mentors in my internships still today with huge gratitude, because they are the reason why I started the formal training once I was licensed and did my continuing education. So that's the answer to that question. And the writing question goes something like this. I have been writing since I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. I use the blank pages of my journals and notebooks to heal. And that never stopped throughout my childhood, into my young adulthood, into my clinicals and schooling into becoming a therapist. I mean, it never stopped. And so I started to look back at that, incorporate different pieces of writing, realized I was writing to heal. And the journey just evolved from very early on. I would say 14, 15 is when I started writing on
Wow.
those pages.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really early. And to have that self-awareness, and you saved those journals.
I did. I'm crazy.
Good
It's
for
funny
you.
because, I don't know, because I think the burning ceremony is coming. I really do. I haven't been able to do it. I'm 57 years old. I just said out loud to somebody the other day, I think the burning ceremony is going to happen. I'm not sure when or how, but there, I said it out loud to you guys. So
Amazing. Well, there's healing in that too. I
Mhm.
love that.
So, how did you first realize that putting pen to paper could actually help release physical tension stored in your body to deal with the stress, the things that you were describing? And how did that influence the writing of your first book, Brave Healing: A Guide to Your Journey?
That's a great question of the when. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to answer it. I think it was the journey, the gradual journey. I remember a turning point though when I was a physical therapist with a business and my goal was starting to be, well, I want to help other people, so I'm going to go ahead and write something other than in my journal that someone else is going to read, right? Because I want to help people understand things.
Mhm.
So that's not everybody's answer because usually journaling is the piece that we're talking about.
Mhm.
But for me, professionally, it was like, oh, someone else besides my mom and my BFF are going to start to read this. Like, what
Yeah.
does that mean to me? Well, it meant energy, intention, focus, attention to this thing that I was then going to put out there. My writing, I think, shifted when it was focused in that way. It started to be a scarier thing to
Mhm.
me, right? And I was paying more attention to what I was putting on the page. More recently, I had an aha about this.
Share.
And it was, I looked back at all of the old journals, and I'm a law of attraction manifesting type of gal, right? So I kind of geek out on that topic.
Yes.
I looked at that and I realized, oh, I've been manifesting in those journals. Like it's time to burn them.
Mhm.
And it is time to start over because now I know what I can do with my magic wand and
Yes.
my pen, So there's a lot of thoughts about this, but Brave Healing was the second book I ever wrote.
Mhm.
And it was in that same effort to share with the world in a way that I knew would help other people aside from myself. So, writing your story is one thing, but deciding to publish it is quite another. And the whole
Mhm.
thing has been a self-development journey.
I bet. And I know that it's done a service to therapists as well who have read the book. Justin's read it a handful of times already, and he comes back to it regularly, right?
Yeah, I had read it and at a time in my life where I didn't have the capacity to absorb it fully because it was our daughter was about a year old. She was still
Very young, taking up a lot of time.
long naps in my arms, and I'd try to read a few chapters, but I myself would be getting pretty tired and fading. But I came back to it again recently and read through it again, ironically, while trying to put our daughter down to bed. She was having a hard time, and it just hit way differently this time as well.
I love that you can go back to books like these and get something different about sort of like rewatching a movie and noticing things that you missed the first time.
Well, you're a different person at different stages of your life. So anytime you pick up a book again, it's going to be a new read.
Yeah.
And it's fun to hear you guys talk about the fact that, you picked my book up a couple of times. It makes me smile. I've had a couple of people, especially with physical therapy offices, and Brave Healing was that book where, like, I give this to my clients, and I'm like, yay, like that's legacy out there for me, right? That's a big potato stuff. So thank you.
Oh, I mean, we are so honored to be able to share the book anyway. So thank you for writing it in the first place. So we have it to share. I'm curious because you have some experience working as a physical therapist, working through John Barnes' Myofascial Release with your clients. I'm sure that you've seen, just like we see kind of on a regular basis, that when clients are going through a treatment, there's oftentimes a big emotional release alongside the physical release. How can writing help people going through that process and these unexpected emotions that come up? How can they help themselves process those during their healing journey?
If I went back to my physical therapy practice and did anything different, it would be to gift the person a journal and a pen and make them write for 10 minutes before they leave my office because of the integration.
Yes.
So, whatever is happening in a session, and it can be, you all know about the healing crisis and what can happen and all those things that are happening. And I think in actually all of the retreats I've been to, the work we're doing in different ways, myofascial release session for sure. I'm thinking about breath work a lot too. Get your pen on the paper after. There have been some instances where people will just grab crayons and a piece of blank paper and scribble. Fine, there's no rules to this, but it's about integration. It's about doing something to follow up with your emotions, feelings, sensations, thoughts, downloads. What are we going to do with that except for get in our car and be like, oh my God, what just happened to me? Right. So what about we rewrite a little bit and process and integrate a little? I just think that's what I would have done if I had thought about it way back then.
Yeah, of course. And I think we've heard that story too from clients or people who've had any other kind of like body work experience where they share with us. I remember I had one woman come up to me and share after I did a talk about trauma and how it's stored in the body. She came up to me, she was like, this makes so much sense, because every time she was seeing another practitioner, I can't remember what type at the time, but she would go to her car at the end of every session and have a big old cry. And she didn't feel comfortable enough to share or let those emotions out in the practice space. So you're right. I think if there was that assigned time and space and the tools given to be allowed to process that emotion, let the tears come while also writing, that would be probably really game changing for a lot of people.
I believe so. And also just the message that good for you if you can release into those emotions and let them express. You're moving powerful energy. That is a moment of healing. We're trained to shove it back down and ignore it, or just wait till later, or it can't happen now, or I'm too embarrassed. Oh my gosh, all the things. So yay for you if you can allow that to bubble up and allow yourself to be human and let the release happen. Listen, I'm guilty. I don't like to cry. I don't like to do that. But the older I get, the harder it is. Like, the Hallmark movie makes me cry now. So I can just do that whenever. But in this work, when you're with trusted, safe people where you guys are holding that space for people to do that work, what a gift.
Yeah, I think for me, I am definitely self-conscious too. Like, I'm convinced I'm an ugly crier. But I do also, you know what? I actually use those like tear-jerker kinds of movies as a tool. I use them when I just know that I've been like holding in emotions and I just know I need to let them out and release the cortisol and all of the wonderful things that science has learned about what happens when we cry. By watching, most recently watching The Help, which is tragic, but the tears came intensely, and I really, really needed that.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I wrote a poem once upon a time, not too long ago, called "You Were Born to Cry," and I'll have to send it to you guys later.
Please do.
Yeah. So, Laura, I've known you a little more personally as a treating therapist before you authored Brave Healing. So I know that your first book was written and released before you decided to become a publisher yourself. Can you tell us a bit about the inspiring COVID-fueled story that led to your first collaborative book project and the true launch of Brave Healer Productions?
Yeah, thank you for asking this. What a great memory, and I think a great story. But, COVID was kind of an interesting time, right? And
Mhm.
everybody's going to have these stories. And I was, it was March 20th of 2020.
Mhm.
I woke up dreaming a dream.
Mm.
And that date was about a week after my therapy practice had dwindled away. Nobody was coming. Had been in about a bit of a panic about that. But I also had been running these two businesses side by side, telling all my friends I was about to really transition, but not being brave enough to do it because the bread and butter was over here and I just couldn't do it. So I woke up that morning literally having a dream about getting my healer friends together to write a book, the book called The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing. There was a mission there to put self-healing tools in the world's hands at home. So I got out of bed that morning with this half dream happening in my head, and I walked to the laptop in my pajamas and I typed a little invitation in a group. I was teaching a class on Facebook. And I said, you guys, the world needs to know what to do at home right now. Who would like to write a chapter for this book? And 48 hours after I put that invitation in, 24 people said, yeah, I'll help you do that.
Wow.
And 5 weeks later, it was a #1 Amazon bestselling book. Like,
Wow.
people now who are in my world have way longer to write their chapters for these books. But that first round, I looked at that. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? And it was the beginning of the empire, really, that is happening now with a community of over 3,000 holistic healers who are really making their mark in the world by sharing these stories. I feel so goosebumpy every time I tell that story. I'm following something way bigger than me that started driving that bus back then.
Yeah, and I feel like you went through something really similar around that time too. You had started putting some thoughts on paper and kind of connected with Laura in that way.
Yeah, I low-key was stalking Laura on Facebook. Like I said about her book, right? I was actually part of her original launch team. So I was on her socials and I saw when she was putting some of these things out there. And quite frankly, I had, my own stories to tell, but I kind of thought they were mine until we opened Myofascial Release Mississauga and began treating clients, and became very clear that other people needed to hear it too.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, it started as a being brave enough to write a blog post.
Mm-hmm.
And then the blog post became the foundation for the story I told in a chapter in one of those collaborative books called Mindset Mastery.
Love that book.
Yeah. And then from there, the practice that I'd written out in that book, actually starting the idea of thinking into how do I codify the communication that I want patients to understand, the point behind the way that I interview, became the foundation for what became my online course.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's continuing to grow from there into other things as well. So it all kind of started with this idea of being brave enough to write my story out, like you said, for other people to read and experience. And it just keeps growing. It keeps providing gifts. It's amazing.
You're right. Yeah. And what a legacy to be in contact with Laura, where you were brave enough to be the one to start this. That's incredible.
It is. You guys are like giving me the double goosebumps today. I love this. I don't know that I fully heard that story before. I don't always get to hear that background story of my authors of what was happening when they decided to say, yeah, I'll help you do that, And Mindset Mastery, you guys, like, the topic is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness is everything, and so that book was also there. That was like a passion project of mine. I was like, let's talk about this and, see how we can help people.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like it should be like a mandatory reading for anybody going through like a healing journey of any kind.
Mhm.
If we could, we would put it in front of every single client, be like, read this, and we'll see you in a week. Like,
Yeah, actually, I ironically, I give out copies of this book because I still have some author copies left at the office as gifts for anybody who comes in for our intensives.
Mhm,
At least
mhm.
until we run out, then I'm going to have to help co-author another chapter, so I have different books to give out.
They also get a
Definitely.
journal and a pen every time they
Very
come
true.
in.
Ah, yay, that's perfect. That is perfect. Yeah, the mindset thing, and mindfulness, right? Like, so I
Mhm.
I switched up that word a long time ago to bodyfulness.
Mm.
And I want people to understand the power in the body and the body awareness. And so we use the terms like mindset mastery, but honestly, it's body mind set mastery.
Mhm.
Yeah, and let's
Yeah.
talk about that because
Mm.
sometimes when we start really paying attention to our thoughts and our bodies simultaneously, because they can't really be separated, we sometimes realize that there's a lot of pain that we've been avoiding. And you've read obviously thousands of stories from all of your authors and have some stories to tell yourself, I'm sure. What are some of the ways that you might suggest people stay with that awareness without getting overwhelmed?
Mm. Sometimes it's at the place and you need help, and so I'll just say that first.
Hmm.
Because if you're in a place where it's the overwhelm and or the level of the pain is not, you just don't have the capacity, then you got to reach out and have a really safe, amazing guide. But
Hmm.
the way that I switched this in my own life to turn it, pivot it towards something better was every single time I felt something like that, I knew it was an opportunity.
Hmm.
And when I say opportunity, I mean for healing at a deeper level so that what is left is more joy, more lightness, more health, more strength, more everything good,
Yes.
And so when I started to practice that mindset, I'm like, all right, pain, I feel you. And it's okay. Like, I feel you, I hear you. I'm not going to ignore or stuff you. We're going to do something way healthier with this at this point, right? But I always like to say, hey, because I have been in places of overwhelm where I needed help.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so you got to figure out where you are with that and how you're going to do it. There's so many self-healing tools you can use, but there's a lot of really great help to get.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's okay to ask for help when you go inwards and you find that maybe it's not what you thought it was going to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
and that there is a lot of pain there. That you should ask for help. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote whole blogs on the healing crisis because of this topic. Because
Hmm.
when you feel something coming up and it is starting to surface, it feels like you're gonna die. It is
It's scary.
intense and bad and scary and awful. And no
Mhm.
wonder people push it away and don't want to go there. But once you start to recognize the healing crisis for what it is, the recognition, the awareness, and the discernment is a gift. It's a golden key. You're like, oh, okay. I know this now. Now I know what to do. And you can go there with a little more confidence, I think.
Mhm. And for me personally, this what I've told my clients when they have that opposition to writing about what's going on is, how wouldn't you love to be able to, like a time capsule, capture the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of that moment, and then be able to return to it, morph it, change it, reimagine it, do whatever needs to happen to move your way through it and out the other side, right? It's so powerful to understand where you are in that moment, and then just as much after the fact to come back and see where you've been.
Yeah, I
Seeing
agree.
where you've been can be an eye opener. And when you're right, and this is something that keeps people from writing, is because they don't want to dredge up the pain again.
Hmm.
They don't want to remember something and re-traumatize themselves. What they don't realize is that the movement of that to the page is a shift in energy, and it's an awareness and a healing tool. And no, they're not going to get stuck in some spiral of pain that they can't get out of. It's actually quite the opposite. Once you can allow that stuff to start to move, it moves faster than you think, and it can be way more therapeutic than you could ever imagine. And narrative therapy, y'all can Google the psychological term, therapeutic term, narrative therapy, to learn more about like the science behind putting your words down, putting your thoughts down. It's powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
So one of my favorite and most profound statements in your book that you make is that healing requires you to trust what you feel more than you believe what you think. Can you elaborate on the meaning of that statement a little more for our listeners?
I love that, and I'm happy to be reminded of it. The process of trusting the GPS system that you were born with, which is the body sensations, the feelings, the body awareness. That process of getting better and better at trusting that, building your intuition based on that connection and your knowing, because you're feeling the messages more than you're believing the thoughts that are coming in and bombarding you constantly all day long, right? And so once upon a time, I created this exercise for this where I put on a piece of paper describing what the yes answer was in my body and describing what the no answer was in my body. And I swear this simple little journaling exercise changed my entire life when it comes to that quote, because I learned what a yes and a no was in my body, in my sensations, in what was actually happening in my body in terms of what I was noticing and feeling. And then from that point on, I had this beautiful cheat sheet because, oh, there it is. That's a hell yes. Like, that's a yes. That's for you. It's for your health. It's for your soul. And I could also feel the no's. It was very, very clear. Somebody once asked me, well, what's a, I don't know, what's a gray area, or I'm confused, that place in the middle. I'm like, well, it's not a yes, so it's a no. And when you can feel it inside of you, I'm not talking about like thoughts or words or messages. I'm talking about a sensation inside your body. You have a magic key to the universe for the whole rest of your life. Like, it's that big of a deal.
It is. You're right.
Yeah.
Like being able to confidently make those decisions about anything, really. Like, do you want to have tacos for dinner? That's always a hell yes. But the other question, the bigger, more important questions about making career change or choosing partners or things like that in your life, having that confidence, like you said, the trust in what you feel in your body, whether that's a yes or a no, that's huge.
Yeah.
So, Laura, you've helped many health and wellness professionals become published authors. What is it about the publishing journey itself that becomes healing for people? Is there something about sharing our story that helps complete the healing process for your authors?
Writing, publishing, launching, and then promoting yourself and your book or your pieces of writing, that whole thing is a self-development journey. And this brave story medicine method that I'm teaching people starts with that private journaling, and it can end with a microphone in your hand. So think about that. Distance
here we are
between.
with a microphone.
That's exactly right. And I love it. Right. And publishing is right before the microphone, but it's pretty high up there with it. Like, you decide to hit go on publishing, and you have decided that the world can read your stuff, and you open up to criticism. You open up to that feedback you might get. You open up to a journey of worthiness, honestly. And, so y'all were born, so you're worthy. Your message matters. When you publish your story and you make a choice to help others by sharing your story, that's a moment, right? And my authors will feel the moment. And probably more than any feedback I ever get, they come back to me after this process and they're like, whoa, I had no idea what I was signing up for. Like like I didn't realize. And I went through all this healing. And then when on publishing day, it was another wave of it. And we joke a little bit. We call it post-traumatic publishing disorder around here. So, there's some stuff about that. And I love being able to guide that. That's it, it is world changing. It's life changing, and it's world changing when we get over ourselves and decide to go ahead and share the story. Somebody's life will be changed because you were brave enough to do that.
Absolutely. Is that how you felt, Justin, reading the little excerpt of the book in Mindset Mastery that you wrote in front of everyone we knew when you did our book lunch? Your parents in particular?
Yeah, it was, my first thoughts were, and then after that, it was a profound appreciation that I told Nelin I was doing it, even though she was questioning why it was important to do in the first place. That
timing is everything.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We always have so many things going on. Right. But it was so profound to share it in front of people who cared, and knowing that they were seeing me raw in ways that they might not have realized because they were my parents, not my peers growing up or my partner. It's a big deal.
I can see you getting nervous just talking about it.
Speaking it out loud is a whole thing. Like, we even suggest that when people are in their editing stages of their work that's about to be published, that they read it out loud to themselves, because when you put the vibration of your voice to your words and you're hearing yourself, it is quite an experience. So it's the best editing tool you'll ever get. So anybody who's out there who's a writer, like, read your stuff out loud to yourself. Nobody has to be in the room. But then, when somebody reads it to you, you're reading it to other people. Like, there's other people in the room now. And it was especially mom and dad that cracks me up. Like, that's it's a little nerve-wracking when it's people who know you. But what healing there is in all of that.
Mm-hmm. So many people have powerful healing stories, but they feel like, who am I to write a book like I did? Or my story isn't important enough, like I thought at one point. What do you tell someone who's hesitating to share their healing journey because they don't feel qualified or they don't feel worthy?
Well, I've said a few things already today. You were born, so you're worthy, but it goes beyond that, because sharing a story, listen, everything has been written before, but not by you. So the unique voice that you have, the way that you were brought up, your life is what matters here for the story sharing. So your unique voice and the way that only you can share that voice and that story is the thing that's going to change somebody's life. So it's all been written before. It's all been shared before. It's all been spoken before, but not by you. So that's what's going to make that a life-changing moment for whoever reads it. It's why you can be brave enough to share your story and know that it is 100% not just worthy, but it's going to change someone's life.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you notice with your authors that there's some element of like shame to some extent in the things that they're sharing, and how do you sort of talk them through that?
Of course, there's moments of, oh my gosh, am I really going to share this out loud? There's also much more often, I don't want to hurt anybody. And of course, we don't come into this book writing thing with any sort of mission to hurt anyone. It's quite the opposite. We're prioritizing our own healing by being able to share our story with the world, but we want to help somebody else. That's why we're doing that. But our authors are moving through all kinds of stages of that thought process that goes on in their head about it and what kind of story they want to tell. Ashamed to say it out loud. Some of our authors are telling a story that none of their inner circle has ever heard in their lifetime. And so think about how scary that is. They are expecting possibly feedback. Maybe they're expecting repercussions. Maybe they're expecting whoever to say whatever about the story, right? And this comes up over and over again. And so I always say to them that there is always a way to share your truth in a way that never hurts anyone, but that you're prioritizing your own healing journey by sharing that story. There's always a way to write it. And in the end, there's also pen names and fiction, y'all.
Right.
Yep.
So if you have to go to the place where you're just writing the fiction story or whatever, like, do it, because your healing should be the priority there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the edits you suggested that we make as we read through our work is to make sure that it stays being about us. So it doesn't end up being a list of all of your grievances as you're going through a story. They did this and they did that. It stays about you. And as a consequence, it stays authentic and meaningful instead of degrading or demoralizing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, yes. And you may have an entire book of stuff to get out of you before the real content moves through of the book you'll publish.
Yeah.
And when you're really writing a whole book, right? Before we were writing chapters, we were talking about writing a chapter for a book, and maybe you have a whole book in you. All of you have a whole book in you. When before Brave Healing was actually published, I had started writing that book, and I got 65,000 words in before I realized it would not be the book that was published. It would be the feng shui of my soul that I needed to get done so that the real book could move through me. And so writing as a healing process is the priority. Get it all out, even the grievances, like get it all out. And then later you may realize you've opened up a channel for the book that's going to be published to move through you. So sometimes we need to do a lot of writing without censoring ourselves. And then, right. And it's funny, we were talking about Brave Healing earlier, because that was that book for me. It was a whole book before that book.
Wow. That must have been a bit of a humbling experience when you got to the end of those 65,000 words. It was like, wait, this isn't the book.
It was tough. I had been shared, a friend shared NaNoWriMo with me. It was a free novel writing program. Some of you guys know it's a National Novel Writing Month of November. And they put it in my inbox and said, hey, there's a free 30-day program, and the goal is to write a 30,000 word novel at the end of 30 days. I'm like, yes, sign me up, because I had already been writing, Yep. And then I ended up with 65,000 words that I did send to my family in I think on Christmas Eve. I attached that to the email, and my family all still talks to me, you guys, but that was not the book that was ever published.
Yeah, that story is actually in the Brave Healing book as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Also in that book, you link this idea of repetition of practice to your experience with Taekwondo, right? That was one of your other big passions as well. And my understanding is that you had a fair amount of writing to do for that too, a different teacher, a different context, but that idea of practicing your craft of expression in a different way. How do you marry the two, the physical movement, the physicality, with the writing practice?
Well, so the Taekwondo story is actually the story of my very first book that I ever self-published. Brave Healing happens to be book 2. And it's, sometimes I'll go back to the beginning where I was a physical therapist, and I would tell all my friends and family, I'm going to write a book. And I never did it. I could just never think of like what the thing was going to be. And I was blogging to educate, but I didn't know what the book topic was going to be. Right. But I am also a lifelong athlete, 3rd degree, black belt, always was doing something. Marathon runner, collegiate soccer player, martial art, you name it. I was moving, my whole life. So my first kid was about 5.5, and we were looking for something for him to do we watched a Taekwondo class, and we walked out, and he looked up at me. He's like, he's just like, I don't know. I said, well, are you going to try it? He's like, well, I'll do it if you do it, Mom. And 6 years later, we earned our black belts together. He was the youngest in the school to do it. I was probably the oldest. No, I don't think I was the oldest, but there was the book. I had journaled avidly for the 6 years. Like I told you earlier, I was journaling with everything. And my book was sitting in the journals. I was like, oh. And so living, healing, and Taekwondo, right? And in our Taekwondo practice, for every exam we took, we had to turn in an essay. So I was writing these experiences for my master, when we would turn it in for an exam, but I kept them all in my journals as well. So after, I'm like, oh, okay, I got the first book. Here it is.
Amazing. That is, and what an amazing kid that you have to say that to you, to be brave enough to say that to you too. What a challenge. That must have been a kind of a proud mom moment.
It was probably one of my proudest to be able to go through that training. 6 years is a long time for a little kid.
Yeah.
He was 11 and a half when he earned his, they call it a POOM belt for kids who are under 15. And we got to take that exam together. That was a 9-hour exam, you guys, for an 11-year-old. Like,
oh my gosh, that's
a lot of kids don't do that, right? No. Yeah. So I love being able to tell that story. I love my dude, Jonathan, who is a young man now and making his way in the world.
Amazing. We could probably have an entire other chat just about that, about that experience raising your children. But I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about the launch recently of your 100th book. That is so cool. And congratulations on that. Tell us a bit about that, and what other projects are you working on now? And how can our listeners potentially get involved?
Oh, thank you. Gosh, to be able to celebrate 100 titles was a major milestone. And I'm so happy that we were just talking about the Taekwondo beforehand, because I was speaking to my family this week and I said, we have to slow the train down and celebrate.
Yes.
And nobody in the Taekwondo class did a whole lot. When black belt exam came around, Jonathan and I had a party.
Yes.
And we invited everyone we knew, right?
Amazing.
So this past May, 100 books. I'm like, I had a party. I had a full day event, and I'm so glad I slowed the train down and celebrated. So that was really cool. And we've got all kinds of book projects coming up. If you want to write a chapter, get with us, bravehealer.com. Poets, I've got an incredible poetry book. And believe it or not, how cool to be able to tell you guys that first book story, The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing, Volume 6 is open for people right now. So if you want to come teach a tool, share a story, and all of our offerings are on the website. So thank you.
Amazing. And you can find all of your books, I understand, on Amazon, because a lot of them are, or almost all of them are, Amazon bestsellers, including, obviously, Brave Healing, A Guide for Your Journey by Laura DeFranco.
Mindset Mastery, Awareness, Meditation, Mindfulness, and Manifestation for the Spiritual Warrior by Laura DeFranco, and many other awesome therapists or healers, myself included. And through your work with KJ Kashula, the Brave Kids series, which is stories for young kids about being brave, written by healers as well, where I have authored.
Yeah.
Yay, your beautiful story in the Brave Kids book. You guys, Brave Kids Books is a publishing imprint that we have for people like Justin who are holistic healers, and they want to write for kids, not just any story, but a story that is teaching them something about life, about intuition, about healing, about myofascial release, about all the things, right? I love it. Thank you for showing those.
Of course. Thank you for being on the show. And please, everybody who's listening, head to Amazon and go get your copy of any one of these titles.
And if you're interested in learning some of the awesome healing modalities that Laura has helped individuals publish, she also runs a transformational school online as well, where we have a version of our course available too.
So you can get a hold of all of these tools on top of your writing practice. So thanks again, Laura, for having you or being on the show today. We really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
You've been listening to the Fascia Fix with Nelin and Justin Krull. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, DM us at Myofascial Canada on Instagram or TikTok. Thanks for listening.